Here we go. Hello, everyone. Tina Spalding Trance Channel here. This is episode 2 of my new video series, How to Save Your Life. Today I'm talking to Dahveed Montane. I've known Dahveed probably, 5-6 years, I think. You came to an early retreat of mine on Salt Spring, didn't you?
Your very first retreat. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was 2016, I think.
2017.
Was it 2017? Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, Dahveed, how long have you been doing the course?
I have been doing the course for a little over 9 years now.
Okay. So when you came to the retreat, you'd been doing it for a couple of years?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had just actually finished doing the course.
Okay, so you just finished the lessons when you came to see me. Okay. What made you take it? What prompted you to start taking it?
Well, the immediate thing that prompted me to start taking it was I started studying hypnotherapy because I had been studying past life regressions, and I wanted to know more about how the mind works and how I could use hypnotherapy to gain a better understanding for myself and to help other people. And the hypnotherapy teacher, the founder of the school that I took the hypnotherapy trainings from, this was in the early days. He had these community meetings that he had online.
Uh-huh.
And he would spend about an hour and a half every Monday night in these community sessions, just teaching people about hypnotherapy.
Right.
And he wove the principles of the Course in Miracles into his training.
Oh, okay.
And I remembered when he first started talking about this, and I was hearing him talk about the Course in Miracles. I remembered way back 23 years earlier in the early 90s that I had been told by someone that you're going to take the Course in Miracles someday because it's a required course.
It's a required course. Yes, it is.
The time that you volunteer to take it, it's only...
That's up to us. That's up to us when we take it, but we're going to do it inevitably, right?
And at the time, I was a total agnostic. In fact, I was still considering myself atheist at that time.
Right. So when you started the hypnotherapy course, what did your life look like? What were you doing for work, and were you just like living a regular kind of life, or?
I was kind of struggling with jobs. I was married at the time and living down here. Previously, I lived here in Florida for a couple of years, and I had 7 different jobs in less than 2 years while I was down here.
Mm-hmm.
That time,
so things were a bit erratic.
Things were very erratic.
Yeah.
And things financially, this was soon after the 2008 financial crisis. And I thought I could come down here to Florida and everything would be great, and I could find some great job and everything, and I struggled with that.
Right.
So
so you took the lessons, you started to study the lessons, and what was your feeling when you did the lessons? Like, did you enjoy it? Did you have a tough time? What was the general experience of having those lessons? Because a lot of people, they look at 365 lessons and they're like, oh God. And then, the first few are easy. And then as you go in, you're like, whoa, this is taking more time than I thought. So what was your general experience of it?
So when I knew, okay, it's time for me to study the course after 23 years of being told.
Waiting. Yeah.
And at that time, 23 years earlier, I was such an atheist that I was like, that sounds so religious. A Course in Miracles.
God, Holy Spirit, Jesus. I mean, come on. Yeah. Yeah.
smells of religion, you know. So I was totally close to it at the time, but I did take note of that. I was like, I'm going to do that someday. Wow, okay. And so once I realized, okay, it's time, I got a hold of, let's see, I first started with trying to do the lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually did them for 2 weeks. I did the first 14 or 15 lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so confusing to me. I had no idea what was happening in these lessons. I didn't know the purpose or anything. It was very disorienting.
Because they don't really make sense from what we've been taught, of course, because essentially, you know, everything you believe in is unreal, those kinds of concepts. And you're like, what are you talking about? Everything's real. It's yeah,
Yeah,
it really hits the ground running with kind of deconstructing our thought system.
right. And I didn't have much money at the time, so I had chosen the lessons because I got on the FIP website, the acim.org.
Mm-hmm.
They did have the free lessons there, and
That's that's the Foundation for Inner Peace, for anyone who doesn't know what FIP is.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so I was doing the lessons right there online because it was free. And I made it 2 weeks, and I was like, I've got to study the text. I've got to read, you know, start reading
right. Yeah.
because I need some handle on this.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing I found that was free, the next thing I found that was free was a recorded audio book
Okay.
course of the text. And I started listening to the text. And it was just so profound that I wanted to repeat a sentence or a paragraph or something. I wanted to go back a little ways and kind of pick up the context again. And it was so difficult to do it on an audio book
Yeah.
because
Right. Of course, with a book, you just go back. It's easy.
I couldn't go back exactly to where I wanted to. And so it was very cumbersome. And I thought, you know, it's too difficult to do the text, too difficult to do the lessons. I really need an introduction to the course. I need somebody that's
Yeah.
done the, understands it and has a grasp on it to kind of give me a handle on what it's all about. So I did some online research, and I found that people were saying that the best introduction to the course, at least at that time, may still be true, I don't know, but the best introduction, they said, was this book by Gary Renard called The Disappearance of the Universe.
Yeah. And I agree. It is the best introduction. Yes.
Okay.
I'd been doing the course for 4 years when I started reading Gary's book, and I had missed huge principles on which the course is based, because even a word like reality, which is used in the course, is not the definition of reality that we think it is. It's
Right.
the real world, which is not this world, right? So things like that, I had been, whenever Jesus was saying, you know, reality in the book, I'd be like, reality, okay, that's what this place is. But of course it's not. And if you don't have that definition, you don't know that you're misinterpreting it, right?
Right,
And
exactly.
did you catch on pretty quickly that it was Jesus' voice in the course? Because it wasn't until in the course that he said he referred to his crucifixion. And I was like, oh, hang on a second. Jesus.
Well, you know, I think I had studied enough of what other people were saying about the course that I probably already knew that
Yeah.
before I started reading
Because
it.
when I started it, I didn't have a computer or anything. It was just me in the book. So I didn't have any influence until I read The Disappearance of the Universe. So
Yeah. Well, and at the time when I was first told I was going to do this course, required course.
Was that a psychic that told you that?
No, it was just somebody that had apparently
Oh,
studied,
they just,
and was very familiar with the introduction where it says this is a required course. It's
yes,
only the time you take it that's voluntary.
right. So any of you that are listening, it is a required course. If you don't start now, you're just wasting time. So start it now, and life will get better.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So you did the 365 lessons. How long do you think it took you? A couple of years?
It took me from the time from the time I started the text
Mm-hmm.
until I completed the lessons and the manual for teachers. The whole course was right about 2 years,
2 years.
it's under 2 years.
Yeah. Okay.
The whole time I was doing the lessons, or maybe not the whole time, but most of the time that I was doing the lessons, I was still completing the text and
Yep.
then turning to the manual for teachers and doing
Right.
them.
I would always read the manual for teachers when I was exhausted from reading the text. If I couldn't handle reading the text, I'd read the manual for teachers. So when you were doing these lessons, when did you start to notice something happening? Right at the beginning, or like, what was that process like? Because for me, strange things started happening immediately. Like almost the first day I started reading it, I was like, I made a phone call to someone, for example, who I would never normally have made a phone call. I was reaching out to communicate to somebody it was Christmas and I was traveling. But I made that phone call and I thought, this is really weird that I'm doing this. I had no clue that it was the course starting to affect my mind.
Oh, okay.
And then like within 2 weeks, I had a couple of out-of-body experiences, which I'd never had before. And I thought, it's this book I'm reading, because I had no concept of how massive the Course in Miracles was or anything like that. And I was like, it's this weird blue book that I'm reading that's causing these weird things to happen. So what did you first notice?
So to answer that question, and also to answer your earlier question about knowing about the course being authored by Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
back about a year, so 10 years ago, my mind was being prepared to even just hear about the course again.
Mm-hmm.
Half a year at least of studying near-death experiences and reading the book Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh,
Mm-hmm.
and just delving into the whole concept of that we're eternal spiritual beings.
Yeah, because
And
you're coming from an atheistic point of view. That's a big leap.
I was a materialistic scientist, atheist. So,
Yeah.
so I had time to adjust and find out that yes, Jesus uh, did not die, and that his spirit lives on, and that he communicates with people here and there all over the world. And so I was
Yeah.
reading about things that.
But did you think that in hindsight, when you reflected back to the year before you started the course, you could see, oh yeah, those were preparations that you didn't even know what you were preparing for?
Right, yeah, exactly.
That was hindsight that made you think, oh yeah, that was all preparation. And it was just naturally arising in you, this curiosity about spirit and life after death and all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, okay, this is another little preparation thing. The thing that started this whole thing was that I had been studying UFOs and extraterrestrials for a year, 2.5 years
Okay.
for this as a materialistic scientist, and just shocked. But I was a libertarian, so I was finding out all these things that are hidden by our governments and stuff.
That we're
And
all seeing now, Dahveed.
yeah,
Yeah, you were early on the conspiracy story thing, but yeah, we're all seeing it now.
yeah. And so on the last Thursday of July of 2013, I had just listened to an interview with somebody talking about how extraterrestrials really don't speak to humans very much in English or whatever language they're speaking in. They don't speak verbally.
Yep.
Telecommunicate. And that was just astonishing to me, to not have to have words to communicate, ideas and images and stuff to somebody. And so I was laying in bed thinking about the impact, the importance of this. And it occurred to me to ask telepathically to whatever higher intelligence might be out there picking up on my telecommunication. I put out this message that I was open for contact.
Mm-hmm.
By that, I thought of it as being physical contact, like actually meeting an extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
And they talk to me, telecommunicate with me and whatever.
Yeah.
And immediately, as soon as I did that, I just really had this reassuring feeling. I mean, it was this knowing that was so powerful that it would happen.
Mm.
It was such a knowing that time didn't even matter. It didn't matter if it was going to happen right then or the next day or at the end of what I considered to be my life, because I still believed in death, at that time, that it was going to be it. I would reach 70, 80, whatever years old, and then my consciousness would just stop, and it would be like sleeping and not.
A horrible story.
Well, it wasn't that bad because, I thought about how
if you've never thought about anything else, it's not bad because it's what you believe in. But,
right.
I grew up in a family where we had seances every Saturday night, and we had to have the house exorcised when I was 9. And, the idea of life after death was just something I grew up with, and I never doubted it. I never doubted that spirits lived. I mean, it was just part of my normal existence, right? So I never had that sort of coming to Jesus moment. I didn't have that. I always believed in spirits, and my mum would take us to channelers and psychics all the time. So I figured that I consider that part of my training, the family that I grew up in, and all the, I grew up with UFO books and channeling books and all of these things. So that was what I was reading when I was like 10, 11 years old. So it was early in my training. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, when I was growing up, I was being taught that if you didn't believe the right way, or if you didn't do the right things, that you were in serious danger of being damned to hell.
Mm.
And I actually started studying for the ministry when I was 24 years old.
Oh, okay.
And in a very fundamentalist Christian church. And I realized that if I'm going to be trying to convince you that you better believe what I believe, because if you don't, you're going to go to hell.
Right.
To know that what I was telling people was really the rock solid truth. Started asking all these questions that weren't being answered in a way that I thought was really the rock solid truth.
So really, you came full circle. You came from a Christian fundamentalist background, and then you abandoned it, and then you've returned to the true teachings of Jesus, which are this amazing book that we've been given of forgiveness and unconditional love and mastery of mind. So let's get back to the course and your experience of it. So when I met you in 2017, you were just starting on a new journey that was kind of coming out of this new mindset that you had. So kind of go back to that time period of kind of leaving the old life and starting a new life. And was that change really precipitated by the lessons and the studying of the course, do you think?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay, so not too long after I had listen to the audiobook, because that's what I was able to get, the Disappearance of the Universe on audiobook. And I listened to 2 or 3 times before I started studying the course. And that prepared my mind, and then I was able to start reading the text.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I lived in an apartment overlooking Tampa Bay. This was in St. Petersburg here in Florida. And it was just a beautiful scene in front of me. The clouds were almost always puffy, white clouds, and the Tampa Bay and the cruise ships going in and out, and the dolphins jumping and everything. And I would sit on my sofa, sipping a cup of coffee, and I would read the text for about 15, 20, 30 minutes every morning, just enough that I could digest. And I would it was like sipping my coffee or a glass of wine or something, because I would just take a little bit in and just close my eyes and just think about the meaning of it, kind of work it through and have these little aha moments.
Yep.
And then I would do that in the evening before I went to bed as well. And so after just, I don't even remember how long, maybe just a couple of months, 2 or 3 months, I suppose, of studying the text. This was I didn't start studying the lessons again until January 1st of 2015.
Okay.
So I had been studying the text for a good 8 months or so. But going back to just a couple months after studying the text and really just digesting the meaning and everything, in August of 2014, I got news that a business that my friend Tony and Tony was the answer to my request for communication with higher intelligent beings, because even though he was human, he was more intelligent than me. And he's the one, it was my relationship with Tony that we started studying all these things. He shared the conversations with God with me and all of these. We started studying all these things together and bouncing ideas and books and videos and everything back and forth with each other. So he was really my partner. Progress towards the Course in Miracles. So Tony and I had been working on this business that for a whole year. And now we find out in August of 2014 that the patent rights that we thought were secured had been actually given to someone else behind our back. And the patents were the basis of our ability to do this business.
Okay.
So I got this news that the business was not going to work out. So that hope and dream of that income from the business, that was by the wayside. So I had to keep relying on this job that I had. This was now my 7th job.
And what was the job?
The job was as a customer service rep, typing responses to inquiries by and it was for one of these big worldwide vacation rental type places. I won't say the name.
No, you don't need to say the name. It doesn't matter. So the business is done now. So then what happened?
So I was just like, well, I guess I've just got to rely on this $12 an hour job. And so a week passed and my wife asked for a divorce. And as part of the...
Wasn't a particularly good week then. You lost your dream job and your wife is dumping you.
So later, my wife asked for a divorce, and part of that is that I'm the one that's going to move out of the apartment. It just sense for me to move out and for her to keep the apartment. So now I'm losing my wife. I'm losing my house. I've lost this business. 1 week later, I go to work and just to cut the story short, I get fired from my just as I'm looking in the area around my job, because I like to live close to where I work. And I was looking for an apartment around there and just couldn't find anything. It was just horrible stuff, just really trashy apartments available. And so I was about to go out and look for, I was insisting I was going to find my place to live near work. And then I get fired. And the reason why they fired me was just so ridiculous that I realized, okay, bam, 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 these things have happened to me actually to free me up.
Yeah. Well, this is the weird part about raising your frequency, which is what you were doing while you're studying the course, right? You're upgrading your consciousness. You're starting to come out of, unconsciousness into more awareness. And as you go up in consciousness, the things that don't match you anymore have to go.
Yeah.
Right? The things that are not loving for you, like you didn't love the job. It wasn't that. Obviously, the relationship had come to its end. And, it's so interesting to see that what you don't get. I mean, obviously, so many people say that, like, oh, I thought it was a bad thing, but a year later, I was so glad it happened, right? And to me, that's spirit working in your life, where you're just like, you're actually getting rid of the things that are not loving, that don't suit you anymore.
Right. And I had developed a level of trust in divine leadings from the other things I had done, plus now the course just really forced all that.
Yeah.
And so none of these things bothered me at all. I was just like, wow.
Woo-hoo. Did you feel relief?
I guess you could call it relief in a way. I didn't really refer to it as relief. Well, I guess freed up is relief, right?
Yeah, freed up. Yeah.
What it was is I knew that I was going to be led somewhere else. I knew that I was being freed up, intentionally freed up, and that I would be led because just like these things happen, bam, 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 these weren't my doings.
Yeah.
I didn't expect or plan or work towards any of these things. And they happened. So I knew they were happening for some reason, and it was to serve me, and that it was freeing me up for something, and that I didn't have to go out and look for it, because all those jobs, after I would lose a job or leave a job because it wasn't supporting me, I would just get all nervous, and my wife would too, and I would just get out my resume everywhere I could, and just it was like a desperation, like where's the next job, what am I going to support myself? And my wife was the same way, you got to get out there, you got to look for the next thing, and you got to get yourself.
Yeah,
exactly. And I knew that I didn't need to, and that something would come up. And sure enough, the next day, my wife and I had agreed to go to a park across the highway right near our apartment and do a little ceremony where we rolled up our wedding vows, which were written on parchment in calligraphy writing, and we had them framed, and we took it out of the frame, rolled it up, and put it in a barbecue pit, and we had our little lighters, and we both lit it at the same time and watched our wedding promises go up in smoke.
Interesting.
And then we sat and watched the sunset for a while and just thought about our time together, and that this was it,
Yeah.
Go home from that, I sit down at my computer, open my emails, and the first email that I found was from somebody that I hadn't been in touch with for 8 months about that business that then later failed.
Mm-hmm.
And he had no idea what was going on in my life. But he said, "Hey, I wanted to find out how things are going with that business. And, what's up? What's going on?" So I immediately, when I got that email, I knew that was it, because he had hired me 10 years before, and I was as an independent contractor for a manufacturer, and I had the state of Georgia as my sales territory. And I had done great work for, 6 or 7 years, and won the Salesperson of the Year award for 2007 for my sales. And then everything came to an end with the 2008 crash, but it took me 2 years to realize that no more sales were going to happen. So this was 4 years after I had left that contract, left that sales contract.
Mm-hmm.
I had actually, when I knew I was going to be moving out of the house, I had actually taken my sales award off the wall and put it in the trash can, thinking I'm never going to do that work again. Mm. And so as soon as that email came in, and I knew I was going to be doing something related to self-storage, because it was self-storage businesses, self-storage buildings and doors that I was selling. And so I immediately took that sales award back out of the trash can and said, "This is going to come in handy." And sure enough, I emailed him back saying, here's what's going on. I lost this business. I'm losing my wife, my apartment, lost my job. What do you have going on up there for me? This was in North Carolina. And so it wasn't a matter of a few days that he had arranged with the owner of the company for me to come back and work as an inside sales rep. And so then I made all the preparations and moved up there. And
I would like to get to the, getting into a bit closer to the current time, like how, because we can get sort of lost in the weeds of all the things that happened there. I know that when you were coming to Salt Spring, you were heading off to Africa, and that was a big adventure for you. Can you kind of cover that a little bit, and just sort of how that radical change happened, and the effect that it had on you?
The reason I was led to go to that job and work in North Carolina for that manufacturer for 2 years was because it gave me the financial support to launch me into my next, all the things that have happened since then.
Right.
Year, when you had that first retreat, and I drove all the way up there and took the ferry, on my car. That year I got to travel all over the world, anywhere I wanted to go, because of the commissions that I made the year before.
Okay. So that job really was a blessing.
Yeah, and also it gave me a chance to, I had a nice salary, so I didn't have to worry about money anymore. And it gave me a chance to really get into the course. And I had a course meeting group, and it gave me that chance to complete the lessons at a great pace, and yeah.
I think it's just great though for people to hear that the endings, can, if you're focused on this kind of work, the endings are literally a door closing so that you can walk through another door. And I
Yeah,
think what's happened with COVID is that a lot of people have lost things. They've either lost their conventional jobs, or their families are fractured because of the arguing over what to do, or, you know, everybody's had these massive changes. And
uh-huh.
I think this is one of the reasons I think I've been inspired to do this series of videos. Is what's happening to the general population is kind of what happens to you when you do the course, which is everything that's not of value leaves. And you
Right.
get given the potential, if you take it,
Yeah.
to start a new life in a way. And I think if people look at the last, you know, what's happened in the last 3 years in that way, then they can stop lamenting what's gone and
Right.
go, you know what, I'm going to do the course and see what comes, rather than, oh, I've lost my teaching job, there's nothing I can do, I'm screwed. You know, I think it's what I feel is happening is that those of us that did the course voluntarily were going through an ego death, where that which is not loving is leaving. And I think what's happening with the ascension process with COVID as a catalyst is that it's being forced on people to let go of that which is not serving them, whether
Mm.
it's friendships that aren't in alignment, or jobs that they didn't really want to do, but they were too scared to leave because they had a paycheck. And in a way, that's kind of how I look at it. And I think, oh, people are being forced to go through an evolution just like you did, but
Yeah.
it seems to be coming from the outside. But if you look at the ascension process in that way, if you can just turn your mind around and go, oh, I'm not losing things, I'm gaining freedom, maybe I'll start that business that I always wanted to start, or maybe I'll travel, or I didn't want to be married anymore anyway, or whatever it is, right? So that's
Right.
kind of how I look at what's going on right now. Is it's sort of the ascension process is happening to people, but it feels as if they're not in charge of it. But you weren't in charge really of your experience either, to be honest. It was just happening, right?
Yeah. Well, I was being led.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're guided. Yeah.
It's a matter of course, retooling your mind to pick up on the
The hint.
communication.
Yeah, the hints. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And now, do you study the course? Do you continue to study and read the course over these years since you've sort of made these big changes in your life, or how is it playing out in your daily life now?
I've studied the course completely 3 times now.
Hmm.
And the last time was in 2019 when you did the year of forgiveness.
Okay,
Um,
the daily lessons. Yeah,
the
with
lessons, yeah.
Jesus commentary. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Um, so I, I, and I'm feeling like maybe I'll do it again. I have a Mary Magdalene uh, course in miracles channeling that I'm thinking about going through that
Hmm.
year, the calendar year, doing one of those every day.
Right.
Uh, I don't have the same, I don't feel the same need anymore. I graduated, and I'm living the principles of the course, you know?
Right. Yes. And you're much more aligned now in with your work and your lifestyle. You feel like it matches you now.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It's
what are you doing for work now? What does it look like in Dahveed's world now? He was a serial employee and was unhappy in those jobs. Now, what are you up to?
So speaking of that and COVID-19, 2020 was my best, I mean, just an amazing year. I had so many miracles that happened in 2020. And the contrast between what was going on for me and my experience, living this happy dream.
I had the same experience.
Yeah,
COVID was a great experience for me, and a lot of people I know who did the course found that, and I think it's a very interesting side effect but I think that we'd gone through the destructive or the deconstruction that the people who it hit hard had to go through, the deconstruction, right?
right.
So were you in
So
Florida in 2020?
I moved down here to Florida at the end of 2019, and then I was led here to Brooksville, where I live. So one of the major things that happened in early 2020 was miraculously I found a car, even though I had no money and no credit. I was basically given a car that only took me 6 months to pay off, and I was able to really easily find someone to give me a car loan, and let's see, and I started this work that I'm doing right now, collaborating with the countries, the United States, most knowledgeable income tax freedom expert. So in this 3.5 years since I started working with him, I would say I'm just as much of an expert as him now, because we've been collaborating and doing a lot of writing together, and that's what I intend to do when I
And
came down.
this feels like a passion project to you?
Well, it has been a passion project up until now. Now I have a new passion that I'm transitioning into, but I feel like I have been so instrumental that I'm in the right place.
Yeah.
This work that I've been doing with him, because it's really free. It's work of freeing people's minds from the enslavement of the government system.
Right.
Or the corporatocracy, let's call it.
Protocracy, yeah. And the taxation system, which is crippling for people, right? The harder you work, the more money you make, the more the government takes. It's like a guaranteed way to keep you less than abundant.
Yep, it's the number one place that our money goes.
Yep.
And it's going towards our own enslavement. It's actually what's keeping the slavery system, that people don't even realize that they're slaves, but it's keeping them enslaved just by going along with.
I think we got a taste of it in 2020. I think it started to dawn on a lot of people, hang on a second, I'm not as free as I thought I was.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I think people started to realize what was going on, and that the government did not have their best interests at heart.
Exactly, and more people are waking up.
And more people are waking up, and the more the truth comes out about actually what went down, is people are like, oh, we were lied to, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And desperately try to hang on to their power, the more people are going to see the light and wake up to what's going on.
Right. So so that we don't go on for like 2 hours, I'd kind of like you to kind of round up what the course did for you. What did it do for you that would make you want to recommend it to somebody else?
Wow. Well, if that's not enough, what I've already said.
Well, I think that those are the stories, but in terms of like the overall effect on you, for me, the course, the overall effect was, I live in a peaceful mind now. I've healed the financial fear and lack story that I had in my mind, because that was manifesting for decades in my life. I have a tremendous amount of faith in that I'm cared for and that my life is going to be great. I don't sort of sit cowering, wondering about the future, you know. So what change of kind of more, you know, sort of overall changes would you say that you've experienced?
Right. I think it's very important for people to understand that when it's called a course, it's not like any other course where you're being taught this information and knowledge. Like it's not about information. It's not about learning some new subject.
No.
It's about peace and gaining peace of mind, and gaining this ability to see that someone that you've always thought of as maybe the epitome of evil, that we've been taught is just a horrible person, can be forgiven, and you can actually see from their standpoint why they did what they did. Or you can get a sense that none of this is real. It's an illusion, and we're making it up as we go along.
And we can make it up into a nice thing.
Yes, we can turn it into a happy dream for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's the waking up, is that we're helping our brothers and sisters.
Yeah. How has it affected you being a guy, being a man? Like how has it changed that aspect of your life? Like, can you see how you behave differently as a dude?
Yes, it's lightened me up for sure in my relationships. Yeah, I'm not looking for any woman to be my kind of savior, or to be able to possess a body, to possess someone else's body, or yeah, to just be able to really relate and to turn tense situations, or situations, as I like to say.
That's a good name.
To turn these things into opportunities to lighten things up and to have a good time. Yeah.
Do you think, well, actually, for the people who are listening, when I first talked to Dahveed, I called him David, and that was his name when I met him, and now he's Dahveed. He's spelled differently. What would David think of Dahveed? What would he have called you? Like, what would he have seen if he looked at you now? What do you think his opinion of you would have been?
Yeah, probably. Well, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure he would have thought of me as this kind of crazy hippie freak. I suppose.
Well, you go to things like drumming circles now. You're wearing jewelry. You have a ponytail. I mean, your physical appearance transformed for sure. So, what do you think of David? Like, what do you think when you look back on him? What do you feel about him?
Well, I can certainly see a huge transformation. I mean, I was really caught up in the world and business and uh, what do they call it? Just the pleasures. There's a
Hedonism.
Hedonism. Yeah, hedonism. Yeah.
Yep.
And just kind of lost in what's this all about, and just trying to make the best of things, and wondering why I wasn't able to do better. Why there were so many people that were so much more successful than me. And now I just forgive myself for that. I'm here where I am in my life, and this is what's happening, and it's so much better than it was, and so much more confident and at peace, and able to help other people see a better side of things, and how to.
So that's kind of how you do your service work, is helping other people out of the pit of despair that the modern world can be.
Yeah, really. A quote comes to mind about how the atonement is about freeing freedom, and freeing. It's freeing our minds and from fear. So that's what I do. The work I do every day is relieving people's fears, helping them understand that there's nothing to be afraid of. Everything's going to turn out well. And this is with income taxes. I'm talking to people every day I go to work,
Right.
just scared to almost to death of doing something that will
Bring down the wrath of the IRS.
An audit, or going to prison, or having pile on penalties and interest and all that kind of stuff.
It's actually really interesting, because that is one of the things that modern day people are most afraid of. They're afraid of the government, and in the United States, they really are afraid of the IRS. And so it's fascinating that that's the arena that you're using the course in, because it really is a huge fear. And then when we're in fear, we're completely disconnected from our guidance. So we panic, right? And we make impetuous decisions. We're not calm, and we can't get that clear guidance because we're in the wrong mindset.
Yeah, exactly. And in the complete and annotated edition of the course, Jesus says, miracle principle number 23 is miracles make time and tide wait for all men. They can heal the sick and raise the dead, because you yourself made death and taxes and abolished both.
Specifically says for taxes. Oh, interesting.
And it says, note that tax also means strain.
Oh, so, right. Such a good name, isn't it? It's so taxing. Tax is so taxing.
Yeah, exactly.
So he specifically mentions that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You're doing God's work then, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I frequently refer to the place in Isaiah where Jesus, and it's in Matthew, where Jesus stood up in the synagogue and read about how I have come to unchain those in bondage and free the captives and heal the sick and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He sat down and they were like, ah, and then they chased him out of the synagogue or something. I can't remember, but that's my ministry here is and now I'm moving into a whole new freedom thing, because right now we are not free to just buy any fuel choice that we want.
No.
So that's my new freedom.
That's your next, the energy. Well, energy's big, man. That's what they're coming. That's what they're shutting down. That's how they're restricting now. It's gone from the sickness to the energy and the climate change fear and scare, and energies. It's all about energy, right?
Right, and fuel is a big part of it too. The fuel transportation, or transportation fuel. I mean, it has a big impact on our food prices and prices else, because everything gets hauled all around with these big diesel trucks, and everybody's all over the place in their cars running petroleum products, and it's non-renewable. And so I'm not only helping people with this freedom movement, but I'm helping planet Earth herself.
Yes.
Of this,
If someone wants to find out more about the tax work that you do and the energy fuel freedom stuff, have you got a website or something that people can go to?
Yeah, they can go to freedomlawschool.org.
freedomlawschool.org. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, Dahveed, I think that's wonderful. It's been really interesting seeing the transformation of you as over the years. And I think everyone should do the course, because why not? It's like, do it for a year and see what happens. I think sometimes when people hear a story of someone losing everything, they sort of think, oh, I don't want that to happen to me. But I think it's really important to remember that sometimes you have to create space for the divine. You know, if you've got a whole bunch of low vibe things happening in your life, the divine doesn't have room to come in. And
Oh,
I think that to me, that's what your life kind of represents. The mundane was removed, and the divine was given room to enter.
right. And if it hadn't happened like the way it did, it probably would have happened. Those same things would have happened, but over a much longer period of time, and it would have dragged on this suffering of
Yeah.
business, and then losing my wife, and having to move to a new place, and losing my job, and it would have all gotten kind of stretched out, and oh, it would have been just,
Oh, yeah. It's like you got the Band-Aid ripped off.
yeah, the same things happen. We're you
Yeah.
know we're
Yeah.
going through the same things, but our experience of it can be completely different.
Yeah. Just out
Right.
of curiosity, how did you find Jesus and Ananda's work? My work.
Well, obviously, I had only been studying. Maybe I was still studying the end of the course, because it seems like it was late 2015 or early 2006. I think it was actually early 2015. So I think I had just started studying the course
Mm.
when you started really becoming active on YouTube. And
Yeah. I think I did my first video in 2014,
okay,
but
and then
I was putting a lot of material up regularly.
yeah, so I think I found you in late 2014 or early 2015, because I kind of remember when I was teaching, I mean, I was leading a Course in Miracles group in North Carolina. I think I remember talking to them about your channeling, and
Okay.
you know.
Well, it's been lovely to see your transformation, and the next phase will be interesting, I dare say. Okay, so I'll stop the recording here, and then we can have a little chat afterwards. So thanks, and thank you everyone for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode. This is episode 2 of How to Save Your Life. What should we call it? Letting go of everything. Oh, making space for the divine. Let's
There you
call it
go.
that. Let's call it that. Let's call it making space for the divine.
Wonderful. Thanks for the opportunity, Tina.
It's my pleasure. I'll just stop the recording here.